event where you had.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Welcome to our celebration of 30 years of the Loretto Earth Network. We welcome you and invite you to put your name, organization, location, and if you wish to put personal pronouns or the land acknowledgement of wherever you are located in the world into the chat, feel free to do that. We are recording today's session, so please be aware of that. And my name's Beth Blissman. I am the United Nations representative for the Loretto community and part of the amazing, wonderful team who put together today's event. Grateful now to turn it over to Libby Como to open us with land acknowledgement.
Thank you for a moment of reflection, remembrance, and respect. Considering our Loretto members who live and work in 3 regions of Turtle Island, near the centers of global and national policy in the Northeast, east of the Mississippi River, west of the Mississippi, and on our Southern Ocean. We acknowledge the ancestral occupants and caretakers of those lands, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, Muncie, Delaware, Ramapo, Lenape, Anacostans, Piscataway, Pamunkey, the Cherokee, Shawnee, Yuchi, Kickapoo, Kanza, Osage, Ochese, Sakowin, Miamiya, Missouri, Illini Confederacy, and Seminole, the Arapaho, Cheyenne, Ute, Kalapuya, Siletz, Shasta, Coastal Miwok, Southern Pomo, Ramachus, Ohlone, the various Pueblo peoples, Navajo, Apache, Quechua, Pocoman, Mayan, and others. We acknowledge that those ancestral occupants and caretakers of Turtle Island were removed from their homelands unjustly to the unwilling but substantial benefit of our membership's white Christian privilege and access to those lands. We honor these ancestors and stand by their descendants in their work for justice and the restoration of the living earth. And considering our Loretto members who live and work in Pakistan, we recognize and acknowledge the Kayatan, Bustars, and those Baloch peoples known as Ligari, Kasrani, Kyosa, and Nutkani, and the ancestral land on which our sisters there are located. To recognize the land is an expression of gratitude and appreciation to these indigenous peoples and a way of honoring their life and work on these lands for thousands of years.
Thank you so much, Libby. We would also like to thank our co-sponsoring organization, JCOR, the Justice Coalition of Religious, with whom we're sharing a virtual exhibit booth at this year's Commission on the Status of Women Non-Governmental Organization Forum. You can check out the work of JCOR, the Justice Coalition of Religious, at jcor2030.org. We will put that link into the chat. Special thanks to their global coordinator, Teresa Blumenstein, a former Loretto volunteer, for serving today as one of our co-facilitators with technical assistance and helping us also with advertising this event. So today, we're deeply grateful to get to focus on the 30 years of the Loretto Earth Network. A 30th anniversary doesn't come around every day, and this year it happens to fall on the exact same year as the 30th anniversary of Loretto at the United Nations. So it's a double anniversary. Lucky us. We're deeply grateful as well because the theme, the priority theme of this year's Commission on the Status of Women gathering is achieving gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls in the context of climate change, and environmental and disaster risk reduction policies and programs. With the review theme of women's economic empowerment in the changing world of work. As we emerge from the global COVID-19 pandemic, which is still raging in certain parts of our world, these are key, important, life-altering themes and realities that we deal with. In this context, we're deeply excited to be able to share the story with different perspectives and snippets of video sharing the history of the Loretto Earth Network. And we're counting on those of you who have been involved to also contribute your voices today, as we will spend time in breakout rooms and also sharing wisdom. And to lead us today through this marvelous journey, we have two absolutely amazing young women, both of whom serve as role models for me on a daily basis. First, as I mentioned earlier, we have a former Loretto volunteer, Teresa Blumenstein, who now works with JCOR, Justice Coalition of Religious. And we also have our current Loretto volunteer, soon to be graduate student in international relations, Jax Wiedeschnick. And I will turn it over to you, Jax and Teresa. Take it away.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. I am so glad to be a moderator today, and I'm going to introduce our first speaker of our video, and someone also present in the Zoom call right now, Marcella Shields. Marcella Shields is a psychologist with more than 45 years of experience in clinical and counseling settings. In 1982, she and her husband, Eldon Shields, co-founded the Center for Creative Ministries in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, with Thomas Berry. She has been a key part of Eliad and a key part of the Loretto community, and I had the pleasure to help record her this video in Lake Oswego, Oregon. So I'm going to pass it for Teresa to cue our video.
30 years ago, 6 women of the Loretto community committed themselves to leading a community and beyond in an urgent response to the cry of the earth. They were inspired by Thomas Berry's call to remember that we are all belonging to the larger earth community with a profound sense of interdependence and responsibility for the continuity of life. The Loretto Earth Network was born out of the felt urgency to establish right relationships between the human community and the earth community. The foundation and continuing work of the Loretto Earth Network is to advocate and alert its members and all who would join us, both in honoring the miracle of creation and the crisis that threatens our universe. We believe that our love, concern, and reverence for the earth compels us to take action. This includes the commitment of our energy to profoundly respect the mystery of life on earth and in one another, and to move away from habits of domination and submission, to commit ourselves to turn from violence into the ways of peace and enlarge our perspectives to embrace the cosmos and take responsibility for our actions. And so today, we are pleased to be here with you to share our story of 30 years unfolding in our commitment to an ever deepening sense of our interdependence with one another and our earth home. In Thomas Berry's words, the present is not a time for desperation, but for hopeful activity. We invite you to walk with us. Every action in support of our Earth home is important, not only for us, but for the generations yet to come, who hopefully will look back with gratitude.
Thank you so much, Marcella. What a beautiful opening. And as you heard, the Loretto Earth Network began as a small group within the Loretto community. The Loretto Earth Network wanted to emphasize the larger Earth community, of which humans are only one part. In fact, the youngest and most recent part in the beautiful evolutionary spiral within which we live. At first, LEN, as we call the Loretto Earth Network, at first, LEN needed to correlate this insight with a Western spiritual heritage to be more understandable to our context. Members supported one another as we kept learning and gaining courage to advance LEN's educational and advocacy goals. In time, the entire Loretto community, or nearly all of the Loretto community, began to adopt resolutions to protect and regenerate the living earth. LEN now provides seasonal reflections of a spiritual nature while helping to educate the community as we now journey onto the Laudato Si action platform. And those goals, those 7 goals, correlate in many ways, I will note, with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So as the Loretto community takes on the 7-year intensive work plan of the Laudato Si action platform, LEN is finding many practical ways to support this communal effort. Let's hear a bit more about the founding of the Loretto Earth Network from another sister who was involved in that effort, Kathleen Tai.
I think that when Loretto Earth Network started, it was all very new to us. But the best thing that we did was that we started having annual gatherings, retreats, as we called them. And they were beautiful because they had started and used beautiful rituals that had to do with whatever the theme that was picked. And the theme was always something about the earth. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was new, very new to Loretto, I think, or at least to my experience in Loretto. And so I think it just continued. And then we learned so much from those retreats because Nancy Whitler brought in marvelous speakers and current top people around. And so, we just learned so much, and it went on and on for so many years. I don't know how many years.
How did it change? How was it different?
How was it different?
How was the sense of the sacred? How was that different?
Well, I think, first of all, that's kind of maybe the first time that people were really aware of the whole cosmic structure and the cosmic world and our place in that. Mm-hmm. And although I don't think early on we used those terms, but we were just aware of our beautiful world and the earth itself. And, so much of what the Native Americans lived, and appreciated so much more than we did. Mm-hmm. So it was just a whole growth process for the Loretto Earth Network, but then it was shared deeply into the community. Mm-hmm. So that's what I think the Loretto Earth Network really educated the community, mm-hmm. and still is doing a lot on that. And so I think then that we can't help but be connected spiritually to our earth. I mean, we are creatures of the earth, and God is present all in so many areas, but present in our earth, mm-hmm. and the whole world, but the earth is so much a part of that, but the whole cosmic world. And I love the term cosmic love, mm-hmm. that the love is not, it's in every single person. It's, the strongest thing, but we're connected to the whole cosmos, cosmic structure. That's a cosmic love. That's how strong it is.
And now we will continue our story with another member of the Loretto Earth Network, who you've already heard from today, but who I will introduce more formally, Beth Blissman, who is a Western Pennsylvania native, currently serving as the representative to the UN for the Loretto community. Beth is a certified permaculturist with over 20 years of experience in higher education, community engagement work, as well as a deep interest in regenerative agriculture, spirituality, and shifting worldviews. So to continue our journey back through the story of the Loretto Earth Network, Beth, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Teresa. So since the Loretto Earth Network emerged within the Loretto community, and we are a community of educators historically, and of fine and creative educators at that, one of the first things that LEN started out doing was educating ourselves and others. We developed educational tools and resources in great profusion, from vegetarian recipe cards and gatherings to little cards that gave us options for how to do our cleaning with natural substances rather than buying toxic substances packaged in plastic in the grocery stores. We got water bottles to use for our water that had our vision statement on it. And we started planting trees in various places. Now, mind you, one of our dear sisters, Anthony Mary Sartorius, had long been planting trees at the Mother House before the origins of the Loretto Earth Network. She is one of our seeds that helped inspire us, and she inspires us to this day in ever so many ways. In my own life, I became involved with the Loretto Earth Network early on. It was one of the things that attracted me to become a co-member of the Loretto community 26.5 years ago. And I just remember hearing from the people who went down to the Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit, Pat Knoyer and Nancy Whitwer and Cami Condon, and I was just so impressed. It seemed to me like Loretto was not only had their thumb on the pulse of what was happening in the world, they were right there. And then as I became a co-member of Loretto, I was invited to get more involved with the Loretto Earth Network. And one of the first things I was asked to do, which will always stay in my heart as a wonderful memory, is to go around to the 3 different Loretto connected high schools, Loretto Academy in El Paso, Texas, St. Mary's Academy in Denver, Colorado, and Narings Hall High School in St. Louis, Missouri. And I got to travel with Kathy Muller, one of my true mentors and guides. And we went around to these areas and talked about the concept of environmental justice and introduced that concept in our high schools. It was truly transformative for me to be playing the role of educator as well as learning. We also, over the years, have grown beyond the United States. Another memory I'll never forget is at my dissertation defense, how Sister Mary Peter Bruce walked in with a sister who I had never met before in a sari. It was Nazreen Daniel, a sister from Pakistan who ended up transferring into the Loretto community. And now we have a lovely, thriving group of Pakistani sisters in Lahore. And so there have been great connections between the Loretto Earth Network and our Pakistani sisters over time. You'll see the photo that I'm sharing right now is some of the fruit from the flourishing gardens that our Pakistani sisters share with their neighbors and coworkers. I have a small paragraph to read to you from Nazreen about our reality in Pakistan and how that relates to Earth. Since 2009, we've been in Pakistan, a country where the situation of women and the girl child is almost inhuman. From the time of conception, If parents come to know that the baby they've conceived is a girl child, they will often go for an abortion. There are midwives who are not fully trained to do the job, and they abort the child for less money than any hospital doctor. In some villages where there's no chance of getting the girl child aborted, the parents go on having babies until they have a boy. I know of a family who have 8 girls and 1 boy. The mother looks so old and worn out. None of the girls were sent to school, only the boy. And he only went through 5th grade and left the school since he was so pampered. No one cared if he went to school or not. We Sisters of Loretto in Pakistan carry the mission of the whole of Loretto and see where we can bring change. We have small gatherings of women on and off and ask them questions about their families and about the dignity of the girl child, her right to life, education, and health. With the help of the Loretto Earth Network, we have provided clean water to the villagers who live near our convent and shared vegetables with those who cannot buy the veggies themselves. We contribute on a very small scale to eradicating poverty. We have taught women to grow veggies in the pots and provided pots and soil and seeds to the women, and they're happy to learn the new skills. They bring the products to us with pride and show us how well they've learned. We've planted many trees on our property. If one looks on Google Earth in our area, the only green patch is our convent. With our literacy centers and skill development programs, we have taught women self-reliance and provided education to those who have never been to school all their lives. So you can see from this testimony from Nazreen that the work of our Pakistani sisters relates directly to both the priority and review themes of this year's Commission on the Status of Women. It's a holistic approach to growing food, to linking that with good health, to linking that with possibilities for economic development. We're so deeply grateful to have these connections. One other educational piece of the Loretto Earth Network that I would be remiss if I didn't mention was in 2012, around the time of our 200th anniversary as a community, we created a wonderful booklet called the Earth Saints book. And that was done in hard copy, although we also have it in PDF form if anyone would like it. And what we do is we lift up Earth saints and heroes, saints who have passed and heroes who are still with us. And it contains little biographies about people who have done really amazing work ecologically. And it's used as a teaching tool at the 3 high schools I mentioned earlier and in other areas. If anyone from outside of Loretto would like more information, please feel free to contact me about that. And as I alluded earlier, there were many, many seeds, many predecessors to the sprouting and blossoming of the Loretto Earth Network. I remember hearing that back in the 1970s, Sister Elaine Prevelet would say to the community, "We say we throw things away, but where is away? There is no such place as away." Mary Swain often says, "Everything is all of a piece," reminding me how everything is connected. We had so many people working on so many different projects related to Earth and how things are all connected. Let's take a moment now to hear how some other seeds of the Loretto Earth Network were planted in Toronto, Canada, through the work of Marcella and Eldon Shields with Father Thomas Berry.
Summer of 1982, the Passionist Community of Canada invited my husband and I to work with them full-time to build a community dedicated to promoting compassion and peace for persons, communities, and the earth. We said yes, committing ourselves to work on the project for 2 years. and we stayed for 22. Thomas Berry, a member of the Passionist community, who referred to himself as a geologian, met with us to focus our work on the realization that we are all interdependent with the earth and have a profound responsibility for the continuity of life. The three of us met and struggled to come up with a name for this new venture. We thought of the Center for Interdependent Studies, but that sounded too formal. Our final choice was the Center for Creative Ministries. The word ministries in the Canadian context means to be of service to others. The new story, which Thomas Berry published in 1978, was part of the initial design of the Compassionate Leadership Program, the core program of the Center for Creative Ministries. Berry's work, The Dream of the Earth, was also integrated into the Compassionate Leadership Program, and the programs designed and presented by graduates of the program. When Thomas Berry and Brian Swim published The Universe Story in 1992, we co-sponsored a presentation of their work in Toronto. Graduates of the Compassionate Leadership Program were there to participate. We joined LEN when it was founded in 1992, and were very encouraged by Loretto's commitment to establish right relationships between the human community and the earth community. Several founding Loretto LEN members joined us for a retreat with Thomas Berry in the Passionist Retreat House in Port Burwell, Ontario.
Thank you, Marcella, for that wonderful overview of some of the seeds of the Loretto Earth Network. We would also be remiss to be talking about the sprouting and origins of the Loretto Earth Network without hearing from Sister Nancy Whitwer. And I'm so thrilled now that Libby Como happens to be at the Loretto Mother House and will be sharing with us now a freshly hatched piece of video that was just recorded this past weekend so that we can include Nancy's voice into our time together today. Thank you, Libby, for sharing this video of Nancy Whitwer. And while Libby's pulling that up for folks who might be outside the Loretto community, just an FYI that Nancy Whitwer is a sister who had been a longtime mathematics teacher at Narings Hall High School, our high school in St. Louis, Missouri. And she had a transformation and became very interested and engaged in earth-centered work. And so when the person who was president of the community at that time, Sister Maureen McCormick, posited the idea of the Loretto Earth Network, Nancy was there at the ready.
I'm not sure what I did wrong.
Okay, well, maybe we can come back to that video later. And I'll pass it back then, I believe, to you, Jax, who will be introducing our next speaker.
Yes, I'll actually be introducing Libby. Libby Como with a Juris Doctor. She was a former lawyer, convened the Downstream Neighbor Water Symposium and attended a retreat at Santa Cruz with the Loretto Earth Network. She's another key member of LEN and the Loretto community.
I've been part of Loretto Earth Network for 15 of its 30 years. And it's been an ever-evolving experience. At first, I needed a spiritual community to hold my dismay at the collapse of nature. And this one was close to my roots. I began with retreats, particularly the ones on the Pacific Ocean at Santa Cruz. Tai Chi on the beach, looking for dolphins, visiting the redwood forest, and going to sleep with the sound of the waves. These were all very nourishing experiences, just what I needed, and not to mention the mentoring that was also available. The spiritual container held me so I could get to work. At the Center for Earth Jurisprudence in its inaugural year in Florida, I learned about the rights of nature. Every morning I communed with the Atlantic Ocean. And when I returned to my home in Denver in a semi-arid climate, I missed water. Today is World Water Day, so you can imagine how I longed for the place of my origins near the Gulf of Mexico, where the Mississippi River meets our southern sea. So it was natural at the top of that watershed to envision a symposium named The Downstream Neighbor and gather different groups to plan it together. One of the Quakers created a beautiful logo with the river flowing from snow-capped mountains to the Gulf where a sea turtle frolicked. Transition Colorado added, "We're all downstream from somewhere." The state of Colorado was celebrating 2012 as the year of water. The Downstream Neighbor happened the weekend after the water barons and regulators met. Their framework is water rights, a form of property to be bought and sold. Quite a contrast. We called in contemplatives, scholars, and activists. Only 2 people attended both gatherings. In ours, over 400 participants flowed through 15 hours of programming in 4 sequential venues, all donated. Maud Barlow's keynote Friday night sobered a packed auditorium as she described her dread marching toward Mordor, referring to the Alberta tar sands. She was advocating at the UN for the human right to water and sanitation, and soon would serve on the advisory board of the Global Alliance for Rights of Nature. She said, "You meet the nicest people doing this work." Then Elizabeth Pareto told us about the Blue Water Campaign near La Paz, Bolivia, where indigenous women pushed back against corporations who were privatizing the water. Elizabeth wrote, "Women reproduce love and care, and in many contexts exhibit rationality in seeking accessible resources, and this necessarily puts them in the role of defending water and life." She went on to describe the contrast with profit-based commercial activities focusing on accumulating money. The Downstream Neighbor ended with a call to overcome the doctrine of discovery and its consequences. It catalyzed a decade of activism for many participants, including me. Over the last 4 years, we accepted a challenge from the Sisters of Earth to explore intersectionality, diversity, and our role as privileged whites. I'm not even sure they knew they were sending this challenge, but quite a few of us received it. Stumbling around and seeking those who challenge us, we found the Indigenous Collective gesturing toward decolonial futures. As we learn to step back and be led by those who have been wrongfully excluded from land and leadership, I'm eager to engage with future collaborators today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Libby, for sharing that video. I'm going to pass it back to you to either cue the previous Nancy video if it's available, but if not, to introduce another video of Kathleen. So I'll pass it back to Libby.
Okay, so I'm going to unmute myself and hopefully I've been cleared to make this work. Let's give it a try.
We're not seeing it, Libby. I don't know if you're sharing it. But we'll move on to the video that Teresa.
Oh, you know what? I think I needed to press share screen.
Yes, and then down at the bottom, you'll need to click the two little boxes to make sure you share the sound and optimize for video.
I'm sorry, this is not. There's two boxes for screen. I say now. Oh, isn't that interesting?
It's a brand new virtual world for us all.
It's asking for a password and I'm not sure which one it wants.
When it asks me, I put in the password to my computer that I use when I log in, and that seems to work.
Okay.
And then one day I
Is that
learned
working?
there was this rather quite profound
Yes.
person who was going to be giving a lecture at the Shaw's Garden. That's the name, Shaw's Garden. At Shaw's Garden. So I got someone to cover my classes and I went over for that. And that was the critical moment in my life. At the end of this very profound and inspiring presentation, he said to the audience, and it was a very large audience, how many of you would be willing to give 1 year of your life to work on behalf of Earth? Well, hands were going all over the place, and I was standing with my arms waving. And that was the high point for me. That was the decision. That was the decision. What happened that day in Shaw's Garden, really, I have been, working and creating opportunities for the kids in my classes to become soaked in Earth. But that meeting, that day, soaked me totally in Earth. So much so that I came home and let the principal know that I was going to be, well, first I had to really get another job. So my first activity was to write a letter to our president, our Loretto president. And from there on, everything just went very smoothly. And in those early years, it was new, and we didn't have any kind of group focused on Earth. So that was fresh. It was brand new to the community. And so many committed people hopped on. And it was so exciting. And
Are you going down for lunch?
Yeah, I guess we are. Yeah.
We can do this later. We can continue.
But it's not
yet. I'm just making sure she is.
Yeah, let's say we both are going down for lunch. Okay. But anyway, that not only energized me, but it energized so many really powerful people within the community. I remember some of the earliest people. Of course, Mary Rhodes Buckler. Oh, yes, she was on the ball.
She was a fireball.
Right, and she was to death. Death was the only thing that could part her from earth. And Dorothy.
Dorothy Mary Bauer.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
she was
Oh
tremendous.
my goodness.
She,
Such a mind and such an artist.
yes, and so passionate about Earth.
Yes.
Those pop up as the two who really got it, really got it. Before the Earth Network was ever heard of, they got it and they guided it. They really did. They were something else.
Wow.
And there were others too along the way, but for some reason, those two stand out in my mind of people who really had it deep in their heart and really understood of the importance of Loretto finally getting on the ball and doing something about, or at least attempting to do something about it.
When you say finally, why do you say finally?
Oh, I'm sure things were happening along the way, you know, but I'm now only focusing on the Earth, the birth of the Earth Network.
I see.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of the, well, one of the early on, and I don't know at what point you jumped on the train.
Of 2007.
See, and
So you had been, I was halfway through. The Earth Network is celebrating 30 years,
Okay.
and I've been in it for 15.
Okay, so you were halfway through.
Halfway.
Okay, well, we focusing on the Earth. Really, it wasn't just Earth, it was our own spirituality. See, we just weren't thinking about doing this or that. We did do this and that for the Earth, but it was what Earth was doing to us.
Say more.
That's what was Earth was doing to us. We were being transformed. We were being both educated, but we were really being transformed. And that, I'm sure, is the most important thing I can say.
Can you say more about that?
Well,
It's important.
I think we fell in love. I think through learning more about the Earth, respecting Earth as more than just Earth, experiencing what a transformation it was making in us. We weren't transforming the Earth. Earth was transforming us. And that has lasted through these 30 years. We're 30 years old. And that's why I feel so passionate right now. I feel so passionate about the future of this Earth. We're all the vowed, and well, all the vowed members, they're going to be the first to go. But the Earth will be here.
Thank you, Libby. Fabulous for including the words of Nancy Whitwer.
Yeah, to hear her reaching for words to describe something that really can hardly be described. I just thought that was such a precious moment.
Do we wish to show the second video from Kathleen, or did we show that earlier, or the second part of the video? Here we go.
You know, like they were talking about spring today, you know, it happens, it comes. And the beauty of spring, it's there. And the jonquils get knocked down with snows, but then they come back up. And I think that's that's the experience of our world. I mean, our earth, you know, whatever we do, there's still people that are doing wonderful things to change it. And it's that effect that really is so important. Mm-hmm. And I think go back to prayer. I think that I just think that prayer is so essential. Connecting ourselves personally with our God in a very special way. And that I'd like to see our committees, and I think our Loretto committees are doing that now. I've heard them say that they always, you know, start with really deep prayer and end our prayer. So anyway, I think that's it. Is that enough for you?
Do you have any memories of being part of Loretto Earth Network that you'd like to share?
Oh gosh, so
anything
many.
In particular?
So many, because I was very lucky to be living in California. And when we moved from the Denver mountains, our meetings from the Denver mountains and so forth, I found this place out in California. Oh, just, you know, right on the ocean, with you sit at the dining room table with the dolphins playing out in the water, you know, that just beautiful. And so, you know, it was always such an fantastic retreat, just absolutely fantastic, of all the different people that came in and did them, and the atmosphere. But I mean, a very holy retreat, that connected us with each other, but with the ocean, of course. That's something nice to be connected to. But yeah, for a lot of people that were from the Midwest and so forth, they weren't around oceans. Yeah,
that would be me.
Yes.
So now, after gathering a few very inspiring memories from the earliest of days of the Loretto Earth Network and some of its earlier activities to cultivate an eco-spirituality in the Loretto community, in the Loretto Circle, we will move forward in time a bit to one of the more recent adopters and more recent members of the Earth Network, Jessie Rathburn. Jessie grew up close to the land in Texas Hill Country, and she previously ran an urban farm in Denver, Colorado, growing produce for the local community and vegetable starts for school gardens. She now serves as Loretto's Earth Education and Advocacy Coordinator. And now we have a brief message recorded by Jessie.
Hello, it is a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you for taking the time to hear our stories of awakening, of transformation, and of commitment to journeying further together. I was dropped into this story much later than others you've heard from today. In 2014, Sister Maureen McCormack invited me to an internship with LEN, both to learn from the coordinators and to contribute to the work of the network. At that time, LEN was working together with the community's finance committee to craft a proposal to divest community funds from fossil fuels and to encourage co-members of Loretto to do the same with their personal finances. This was an enormous undertaking designed to respond to the call of the times, to follow the lead of and act in solidarity with many other communities around the world, and to adopt another lived expression of our values. In this first immersion into the Loretto Earth Network, I experienced what I have come to understand as the foundational awareness the network continually recalls for us. As our awareness of the role we play as a human species in relation with the rest of the universe deepens, we must respond by modifying our personal and communal habits, practices, and systems. We are Earthlings, along with every other being on this planet, and we are called to realign our position to help bring about balance, healing, and generativity. Over the next few years, I simultaneously immersed myself into the ongoing work of the network and took a step back to get a glimpse of the deep learning and worldview shifting that had taken place in this network and subsequently in the broader Loretto community over the previous 25 years. What I found is that LEN started where so many of us do, with what is tangible right in front of us. Early proposals focused on discrete individual actions, saying no to bottled water, calling for the use of recycled paper, encouraging the transition to natural, non-toxic cleaning supplies, and phasing out pesticide use. Over the years, the proposals turned to broader themes, recognizing the rights of nature, endorsing the Earth Charter, and calling on the UN to add the right to water to the Declaration of Human Rights. Additionally, we gave inward attention to determine how best to protect and preserve Loretto-owned lands. Some of these proposals were immediately adopted by the community. Others took years to explore, study, discern, and implement. Importantly, through all these early years, LEN held a deep commitment to education that addressed all aspects of the human-earth relationship, our spirits, our physical bodies, and the ways in which we act in harm or reciprocity. Quarterly, LEN published a newsletter that touched on many themes: recent scientific discoveries, new layers of ecological spirituality, personal tips to live more lightly on Earth, and calls for advocacy and acts of solidarity. We also began observing seasonal changes throughout the year in rituals of equinox and solstice, and we continue these today. This ever-present voice to reconsider who we are as a species and to live in a more reciprocal relationship with Earth imbued itself in the lifeblood of the larger Loretto community. Today, efforts for ecological justice are seen across the community. At our mother house, we have established a woodland nature preserve cemetery for green burials. We practice regenerative agriculture and are in the final stages of putting a conservation easement on over 600 acres. We strive to make our buildings as energy efficient as possible and adopt new practices, such as installing an electric vehicle charger. It is impossible to say exactly where the motivation for these actions was born, but that is the beauty of movements within communities. Naming our values and committing to making decisions within that framework leads to processes that result in a new way of being that often extend far beyond what the original founders imagined. Each step opens up possibilities for learning, nourishment, and further acts of justice. In talking with sisters and community members who have been involved with LEN since the beginning, they speak to how Loretto has always been a community dedicated to peace and justice. But with the birth of and subsequent education and leadership provided by LEN, the community experienced a tilting toward Earth, which expanded our understanding of justice and helped us recognize the ways in which all forms of justice are interwoven through Earth. Today, we continue on the journey. In 2018, the Loretto community committed to significantly mitigate our impact on climate change and ecological degradation. Daily, we are learning what this means, both as individuals and as a community as a whole. In 2022, we joined the Laudato Si Action platform, dedicating ourselves to this 7-year journey of ecological conversion. We are challenged to move beyond the mindset of checking off items to make our lives greener, and to experience this as another shift, another reorienting to fuller transformation, now 30 years into the journey. We do not know all that will be asked of us in the process, but we commit again and again to continually take steps to evolve in solidarity with Earth. Thank you.
Well, that was from Jessie Rathburn, and that was our final video that we will, and final speaker that we'll be presenting to you today. And now we're really excited for the collaborative part of our parallel event of having breakout rooms for you guys to share your thoughts, reflections, and be able to connect with each other. We're really excited that you have heard several different perspectives about the seeds that were planted before the Loretto Earth Network emerged, its sprouting and growth, and some of the fruits that the Loretto Earth Network has produced in terms of education, spirituality, and structural change within the Loretto community. We now wish to give everyone the opportunity to reflect upon the harvest, and also time for you to share your own work. We're so excited to hear about the projects you're doing and network with others to continue to support the flourishing of the earth. We will now enter breakout rooms for about 13 to 15 minutes and reflect on the following questions. What inspired you about what LEN has done thus far? And did any one project in particular resonate with you or your work? And what creative projects are you involved with? So we'll be placed in breakout rooms soon.
I think we've all made our way back from the breakout rooms now, and I hope everyone had an opportunity to interact with some like-minded folks with some inspiring new takes on this common interest of ecological care and spirituality that brings us together today. And we'll just take a few minutes now to offer the floor to anyone who heard an important word or an idea that you might like to share from your small group discussions here with the whole group. And just as a reminder, our prompting or guiding questions are on the screen for us. But if you are interested in sharing a thought or a takeaway from your small group discussion, I would invite you to raise your hand, and you can do that either with your video on and just wave at me, or you can use the digital raise hand function, which you'll find underneath the reactions button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Under reactions, there's the option to raise hand. So either way will work, and I will be on the lookout here for hands being raised via video as well. Is there anyone who'd like to share something, or maybe even pose a follow-up comment or question to some of the earlier videos? That's also that invitation is also open. I, for one, can say from my small group that I was really appreciating the openness of the Loretto Earth Network beyond kind of the official bounds of what we might consider a congregation of a specific religious tradition or a specific, group of vowed people, but that it casts a wider net or a broader tent to really welcome in people who are practicing different traditions or maybe transitioning from one tradition to another in their faith journey. But really a group and a community and an approach to spirituality that embraces all traditions, centering around what we view as kind of the common scripture or the common sacred text that is our natural world, as kind of looking at that as the primary revelation and the primary sacred text, the primary incarnation. And we really appreciate that Loretto Earth Network kind of followed suit with that kind of openness and recognition that the network shouldn't be restricted based on more specific tradition or more narrow tradition, but be open to the creative whole. So that was something that emerged in our conversation. And yes, I see the hand of Barbara Nicholas. Go ahead, Barbara.
Hi, Teresa. That was a beautiful affirmation there that you just offered, and it follows, or my comment actually is sort of the reverse. I was thinking of all the gatherings of all of our white-haired seed planters that you might think, and the hope that persons like myself have in you all, you and Jax and even Beth, as you live in this world today. We haven't given you very much of a good thing in so many ways, and yet the vitality and hope that you bring is certainly a gift to a person like myself at the other end of life's continuum here. But so thank you, and all of you all really who continue to make this beautiful earth what it can be for all people. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Barbara. And yes, I think it's come throughout the broader context of the Commission on the Status of Women, of which this event is a part. I've heard many echoes of the importance of intergenerationality. And so I completely agree with that, the life-giving element of that kind of interaction. And I think probably because it does, again, reflect this idea of recognizing that we are all part of a community, and that's a community through both time and space. And so reaching out to better understand those linkages through not only the physical spaces of the present, but also connecting through time is an important piece of how our world works and how we also should work.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or ideas that anyone would like to bring forward?
Well, in connection with what you were saying earlier, Teresa, it reminded me of Thomas Berry's statement that Earth is the first book of Revelation. It's not in words. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I see the hand of Guru Dilipji.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Namaste everyone. I'm Guru Dilipji, the Secretary of the Religious NGOs Committee at the UN and the founder of the World Yoga Community. The first time in the group, I want to wish you all a happy Women's History Month. And I know only two people, that is Bates, my friend, and today I met Barbara, your president. I just wonderful to see you all. I'm just learning about you guys. I'm a new beginner. Thank you.
And I will note that in true Loretto fashion in our small group, we did not really address any of those three questions, certainly not in order, but we did have a wonderful and lovely conversation. And Guruji, I was hoping you might put the link for the World Yoga Community into the chat, so we will have that to share with people. And you said there's a prayer service tomorrow at 11 a.m. for Women's History Month, so feel free to put the link to that in the chat as well, because connections abound, and we are so grateful.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other word, idea, lingering question, or inspiration anyone might like to bring forward? Yes, Julie.
Yeah, it says, what creative projects are you involved with? Well, I'm one of the newer members on the Loretto Earth Network Coordinating Committee, and I am so grateful for the beginnings. And I just, it's just such a gift to be involved. So I'm happy.
Great, thank you, Julie. And I think we'll take a final word from Jax.
Yeah, thank you so much, first of all, to everyone participating. And something I brought up that was, I'm very Loretto, just totally, we went on our own path with the questions, the guiding prompts, but something we discussed that I thought was really interesting with work with climate justice in the earth is, how much can we take on individually and how much can we look to change the world? And we kind of discuss it's super important to have a balance to look at our own habits and cultivating our own spirituality with the earth, but also to really look larger. It's that tends to have the most impact, even though it seems like the most immovable things. But I wanted to share that. We had a great discussion about the balance of changing our individual actions and trying to change the actions of larger communities. And it's groups like Elia, and that really helps create a collective voice for the positive future. So I wanted to share that thought and idea we came up with in my breakout room.
Awesome, thanks, Jax. And if I can insert a little bit of my own answer to that final question there, I'd like to invite you all to a project I work on, which is a weekly virtual eco-spiritual community gathering that I have been pursuing since partway through the early parts of the pandemic. That is happening. We do it chunks of weeks at a time. So right now we're in the middle of a series for Lent. That's just 1 hour every week. So if you have any interest, there's more information there at that link. And with that, I will move us on to a prayerful closing, a spiritual closing in this vein of love of earth and love of creation and our common home. And this is a prayer that's been adapted from a few different spiritual resources from different interfaith groups. So as we go forth today, we greet all our relations through the sacred elements of life. We greet the fire, the air, the earth, and the water. We greet one another as sister and brother reflections of these sacred elements, children of the Mother Earth. We hold the earth. We hold sisters and brothers who suffer from storms and droughts intensified by climate change. We hold all species that suffer. We hold world leaders delegated to make decisions for life. We hold the earth. We pray that the web of life may be mended through courageous actions to limit carbon emissions. We pray for right actions for adaptation and mitigation to help our already suffering Earth community. We pray that love and wisdom might inspire our actions individually and as communities. We hold the earth so that we may, with integrity, look into the eyes of sisters, brothers, and all beings and truthfully say we are doing our part to care for them and the future of the children. May love transform us and our world with new steps toward life. And as we conclude this gathering, may we hold ourselves accountable to the promise of increasingly right relationship with the earth for another 30 years and beyond.
Thank you so much for attending our event, and that concludes our programming for our celebrating 30 years of Loretto Earth Network parallel event at CSW 66. Thank you for attending. At this moment, if you made any interesting connections with people, we encourage you to put your information and contact sharing in the chat at the moment. I'm also going to be sharing some more events that we'll be hosting in our Loretto at the UN J-Corps virtual exhibit booth on the NGO CSW forum in just a minute. And yeah, please follow us on social media for more events. And most importantly, we really appreciate everyone that was here and that was present with us. So thank you.